Hello, this is Adam Watson at Watson EdTech, and we are definitely in the middle of unusual times in our particular district here in Shelby County Public Schools in Kentucky. We are in the middle of week 4 of non-traditional instruction, or NTI. It is some difficult and lots of adjustments, and it's like our Kentucky governor says, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. And with the spirit of getting through this together, I wanted to offer this video of 5 Google tips for NTI time. This assumes that you have a Google domain, and what I've tried to do in the 5 things that I picked to talk about today is things that are either Google tools that may not be as common, or features that are inside of some common Google tools that you may not be aware of, or I'm putting in the context of, in this non-traditional instruction experience, it might be helpful. And of course, the hope is that all of these different features and tools are things that once you return back to the quote-unquote regular classroom, whatever that means, that we would be able to use those then. So with that, let us get started. We have here as the first tip is inserting audio into Google Slides. Now this is a tip feature that they have had out for a while. And they had it in a rollout and finally has come to fruition. And the actual piece of doing it is very, very simple. When you're inside of your Google Slide, you go under Insert and then choose Audio. But as you can see here, there is a link for further directions. And I should add here that all this the Google Slide link is going to be provided in the description for this video. So you can access the slide and therefore be one click away from these different documents. Here's the thing with the audio in Google Slides. It assumes that it is a WAV or MP3 file, and it is a file that you've already created. And you might say to yourself, well, why would I want to insert an audio file? There's lots of different great reasons why. Younger students can hear you talk. It could be a narration kind of device. If you have students that speak a different language, this might be an opportunity to add a translation track, if you will, along with the language that the slide itself is in. You might give differentiation instructions beyond what the text says. It could have specific content like a speech. And with that in mind, instead of going outside of the Google Slide, they have that speech material just right there. And students themselves can use the inserting audio feature in order to amplify and make their slides even more creative and reflect deeper learning. With all those things, again, you have to make the audio clip in advance. You can't make the audio clip inside of Google Slides. So in this particular doc that is linked in the Google Slides, I mentioned 3 quick ways that, depending on the device that you have, would be a way that you could record audio and then insert it afterwards. Last thing I'll mention really quick in passing is that once that audio is inserted, there is an icon that's created, and by clicking on that or right-clicking or going into the formatting of box of options, you can do some various things to it. A lot of them are just stylistic, but 2 that I would want to mention really quick is that you can choose for the audio to continuously loop once it's played. When does the audio play? Does it play as soon as the slide is clicked to that slide, or is it something that you have to hit the button? And you can think of different ways that instructionally that might be used and done with some sense of intentionality, such as, for example, maybe it's a picture of different things about a jungle, and the audio track is kind of atmospheric. It just kind of gives the ambiance of what a jungle sounds like. So you might think of creative ways like that to amplify and enhance your Google Slide experience. Let's go to tip number 2. One of the things that came up in our district was, how can I call out to students without having to use my own cell phone or landline where my number shows up? Because I still need to reach students, and in some cases the students don't have internet access, but they at least have a phone. Well, in our particular district, we can use Google Meet between adults, between staff members, but we do not have Google Meet turned on for students to be able to use. Nevertheless, there is a feature inside of Google Meet that basically allows you to make a phone call out. And it's one of those things that you wouldn't know it if you didn't stumble across it, perhaps, but there is a way to do that. So here, again, is the doc that's linked inside of the slide. It's fairly straightforward. Once you create a Google Meet and you're inside of one, even if you're by yourself, you are going to click on this icon for people, which will open up these 2 tabs. By default, the first one that's highlighted is all the people that are in the meeting. And when you get there, you can click on Add People. And when you do that, you'll have another box that opens up. You want to click on the one that has call with the phone icon. And from here, you can enter in a phone number, and while you're sitting there on the laptop, it will call out just and work basically like a regular phone. So that's a great opportunity to get someone on the line. One real quick tip though, just be aware that if it's a meeting that actually is several people and it's not just a one-on-one experience that you're doing, that person's phone number could possibly be listed so that other people would see their phone number. So for the sake of privacy, or if you have several children or students in the room inside the Google Meet, that might be something you want to be aware of. All right, we're going to go to tip number 3, Jamboard. I have talked about and known about Jamboard for a while, and it's still, I think, a secret sauce Google tool that I myself sometimes have to remind myself to remember is there, that have lots of different uses. There's a blog entry where I go into deeper detail, but just to show you what Jamboard looks like, first off, just notice it's going to jamboard.google.com is the Jamboard space. If I want to create a new Jamboard, I can click on this plus button. But I'm just going to show you that as far as when we go into a Jamboard that I've already made, it looks a lot like one thing that I refer to it's Padlet looking. It's a great opportunity to kind of do some quick brainstorming or a collaborative space that students could use with each other, or that a teacher could use with his or her students. You can create these post-it notes, create copy. There's some doodling features. There is a laser pointer option where you can kind of do this. And so again, think about this from a telepresence perspective as far as having a Jamboard that you could create perhaps while students are kind of doing a shared screen experience. They're seeing that happen, and you can use this presentationally. There are some limitations. One big one is probably, like, for instance, if you put in a hyperlink, it's not going to be an active hyperlink. It's just going to be plain text, which is an example of that is shown here. You can also, as you can see here navigationally, I can add additional frames and kind of create a slide experience. This reminds me a little bit about what a interactive flat panels whiteboard experience might be like as far as adding additional screens. And last but not least, you can now share the Google Jamboard much the same way you would any other Google Doc, and you can of course make it editable so that anybody, either specific people or anyone with the link, would be able to come in and experience and edit onto the same Jamboard. So that is Google Jamboard. We have, for number 4, Keep, Google Keep. Again, a tool that I've known for a bit of time, and it has come in useful, sometimes in surprising ways, but it is a great opportunity to have a short little way of portfolio, of collecting, of conferring. I've seen different ways and usages of Google Keep in those ways. One thing that's neat about Google Keep is that you've got the desktop version. Again, you just go to keep.google.com. When you go into the desktop version, you'll notice that there's a way that you can pin certain notes at top. And as I scroll, you're going to see additional notes here. You can see that I can label notes, so I can see just all the notes that have this label versus that label, or go back to all of them. You can create reminders that tie into Google Calendar. The additional way that you can use Google Keep is that there is a mobile app version, and that does give you some interesting interactivity. For example, you can create an audio note on the mobile app, and although you can only create the audio note inside of the mobile app on a phone for Google Keep, it will load up to the cloud and load up to your Google Keep account, and that you have an opportunity to play that audio clip inside the desktop version. There's also interesting things you can do with reminders, like you can do it placement based, so that with your Google Keep app, you could create a reminder and tie it to a map location, and then when you get within so many feet of that location, it triggers it. Like, for example, you set it up for your grocery store. When you get within so close to the grocery store, it would trigger a "Hey, get milk" reminder. Interesting possibility there. Not quite sure how educationally a placement-based reminder might work, but again, it's a very powerful tool. And the notes themselves, you can add collaborators. The one thing to keep in mind is you don't have the nuance of being able to say, hey, you can just view this note, but you can't edit it. If you add someone to a note, you both have the ability to delete, change, copy, and text, and so on. But I've seen teachers use these notes as ways of doing a conferring, tracking way of what's the last thing that we talked about, when did we talk last, what was the objective goal the student was planning to meet, and then when you come back together, you can revisit that Google Keep note and see how things are going, for example. So lots of opportunities there. using Google Keep, and a lot of artifact collection opportunities, I think, inside of Google Keep, both with the mobile app and the desktop version. Okay, we're coming up to number 5, which is Google Classroom. Now, the thing to keep in mind about Google Classroom is that what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people that are using Google Classroom pretty much for the first time out of necessity. The necessity being the mother of invention, as they say. So one thing that's come up with adults that just happen to know that I do education technology, not necessarily parents of students in my own district, but parents have reached out to me saying, hey, we're suddenly asked to have our children inside of a Google Classroom, and is there any opportunities or ways that I can see what's going on, what assignments they're doing, and if there's anything that's missing or not done yet, that kind of stuff. And the short answer is yes, that is possible. Although I've noticed that a lot of people that use Google Classroom don't know that, and people that are just now using Google Classroom are probably in the midst of discovering that world. So once again, I have a doc with directions, but it does have an opportunity that inside of Google Classroom, you can create a system where once a week an automated email is generated to guardians and parents, which will say what's going on in those classes in terms of missing work and so on. So the idea, though, is it's the setup that's the tricky part. Your district has certain things that as the admin of the district, they have to set up and allow for teachers to be able to do this. So that's something that you might want to think about, or reach out to your friends at central office of wherever you're at if that's not turned on, or have that conversation. Next, the teachers obviously have some steps to do. The good news is that whatever email you have for the guardians, it does not have to be a Google email. It can be any email in order for the system to work and for this automated weekly email to be achieved. In this doc that I'm sharing that's linked to the Google Slides, I even have something that's directly addressing to parents and guardians with a little blurb that they can copy and share that has the hyperlinks to the directions necessary for the district admin to turn it on, for teachers to set it up, and so on. So again, it's a helpful tool, and it's once set up, a good automatic email way of keeping parents in the loop in these difficult and unusual times that we're currently in. That wraps up all of the tools I want to talk about today, so I'll just end with all the ways that I am online with Twitter and Instagram at Watson EdTech. My email address, I do have the EdTech Elixirs blog, which a couple of those entries were linked inside of the slides. I also have a Facebook page for EdTech Elixirs. And last but not least, as a last parting gift, there is a blog entry that I did recently, just kind of reflecting on the times we're in, but I also shared our district's NTI resource document, as well as a video that I did recently for Kentucky Go Digital, where I discussed virtual field trips and some resources and ways to use that as part of your lesson planning and work for students, especially, again, as we're in non-traditional instruction times. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you the best of luck and hope that you and yours are happy and healthy at home.